Hello, welcome to lecture number 8 in the course on Tantra number 1. In these courses, we are studying the book written by my spiritual master Prabhuji called Tantra, Liberation in the World. In this particular book, Prabhuji shares the tantric revelation, and I think that everybody that is interested in the spiritual endeavor can very much benefit from the clear explanations that Prabhuji explains and the very relevant attitudes that the Tantrikas suggest to adopt in order to pursue spiritual development. I will take a few paragraphs, we analyze them together, we read along, but nothing can replace an introspective and reflective study of the entire book. So I very much recommend, if you're interested in the topic and if you want to follow along these lectures, to take a book and read the entire chapters that we hear, just touch some points and analyze them. Prabhuji, as you know, very much encourage the self-reflection, the critical thinking, really, the exploration of the topics, and not just to study or to stay in the intellectual level, but to see how this revelation can touch my life and enrich my life. And the Tantrikas analyze the adventure of being a human being, and if we are interested in knowing who we are and what we're supposed to do and how we can achieve or enlarge our awareness, so they have a lot to give. In this particular lecture, we are going to study one section of the book that is called Two Parallel Revelations, Vedic and Tantric. I think it's a very important point to understand in which context the revelation appear and what this revelation innovates. And in order to do that, Prabhuji gives us some of the spirit of the comparison between the two revelations. So in this lecture, we are going to study the following topics. Topics: Two Parallel Revelations, Vedic and Tantric. Pravritti and Nivritti, Bhoga and Tyaga. Let's get started. We find two parallel revelations within Hinduism, the Vedic and the Tantric. Rather than contradicting each other, these are two approaches to the same truth. The first is Brahmanical and is based on the Vedas, while the second is based on the Agamas. It will be very helpful to understand Tantra if we know more of the historic context in which this revelation unfolds. That's why Prabhuji dedicated a big part of the book to explain the context. Although Tantra is not considered a historical event, because it's not considered to be from human origin, it's a revealed wisdom. That means that the wisdom is eternal, it always existed. But in this particular time and circumstances, there were the right channels for this wisdom to arrive to humanity. What are the right channels? The rishis. The wisdom of Tantra is being transmitted by the seers. The wisdom of the Vedas was transmitted by the Vedic seers, the Vedic rishis, and the wisdom of Tantra by the Tantric rishis. What is spiritual wisdom? Is a direct experience of truth that is written in words, in scriptures, but the scripture is the authority of these scriptures is the divine wisdom, and the divine wisdom is shown to the seers of truth. It will be very helpful in order to understand better Tantra, to put it in the context of the historical events and circumstances in which it was revealed. Prabhuji dedicated a big part of the book to explain the context and to explain the time and circumstances of this revelation. Although this wisdom, this tantric wisdom, is not a human invention. It's not from human origin. So it's not an invention that started at a certain point in time, but it was the right riches, the right tools were available in order for this wisdom to, and of course the divine grace that give us tools, ladders to climb and enlarge our level of awareness. So the context was that the Vedic revelation was very, very ancient. It's even, there are scholars that said that it's as ancient as 6,000 before the current era. So it was in the beginning an oral revelation, and then it was put in writing at certain 2000, 1900 before the current era. And this was the wisdom that reigned in the Vedic society. They worship according to the Vedic ritual system. They organize society by the system. They have moral values and the rules and the regulations based on the wisdom of the Vedas and later on the Upanishads. Tantra was revealed in the Indian subcontinent in the context of a Vedic society. It was born, it started. The first seed were from Vedic Brahmanas, that they were following the Brahmanism based on the Vedas, but the Tantras have very different values. They have different scriptures, they have different lineages, different deities, and different goals, different ways, different means to liberation. It's a very different revelation. Yet they didn't see it as something different, like any other religion can see themselves as even conflicted. But they saw that in the current yoga, we need a revelation that is more appropriate for the current era, for the current situation. In the Satya Yoga, they are all very saint. Then we have the Tetra Yoga. Then we have a decline in the level of awareness, Dvapara Yoga. Finally, Kali Yoga is the most degraded yoga, is the yoga that we are currently living in, where the forgetfulness of God, of the values, there's the age of quarrel. We can see it in we cannot trust the leaders. This is how the Vedas describe this age, where the corruption is in the leadership, when in the other yogas, the leaders are the models of society that leads and take care of society. So this is the age that we are in. And for this age, Tantra is more relevant. And that's why the Vedic society also understood it. And as it was developing and unfolding this revelation, instead of separating this from Hinduism, they start to incorporate the tantric system, ritual system, is the official system of Hinduism today. So this, the more archaic practices were replaced by the tantric practices, and then what we call today is a merge of tantric and Vedic revelation. So they were parallel, as Prabhuji explained, but ultimately they merge. So in this lecture, what we are going to do is to understand what are the main difference between them, and what is the innovation that this Tantra make, and why it was so welcome and embraced by the current generations that live the revelation, and finally why it was incorporated into Hinduism with a very new approach. Prabhuji starts by explaining what the Vedic religion includes. The Vedic religion includes a dharmically permissive path called Pravritti Marga or Bhoga, and another path of absolute renunciation called Nivritti Marga or Tyaga. So in this class we will going to learn these terms. What is Pravritti, what is Bhoga, what is Nivritti, and what is Tyaga. So let's start. So Prabhuji said that the Vedic system included two options basically. Or you go through the path of Pravritti, which means go toward, or you go through the path of Nivritti, which means get away from. Vritti is thought or mental wave, so Nivritti is a path that you have no mental waves, to get away from the world, Pravritti is different, is going towards the world. Pravritti, seeking happiness in the world and enjoying life within the limits of Dharma. Nivritti means renouncing worldly pleasures and attachment in pursuit of self-realization. So when you were living within the Vedic values and you wanted to advance spiritually, to become a person more pious, to acquire good karma, so you had two options to live, two paths that were presented to you. One is the path of living in the society, living in the world, enjoying the pleasures of the world, pursuing happiness within the limit of Dharma, but doing that by indulging in the pleasure of the senses and in the sexual intercourse with a partner to become a parent, to make a family, to accumulate wealth, to pursue honor, or kind of worldly satisfactions. And this is considered a pious life because it also comes with its duties that you need to fulfill and the worship to the gods, of course. But those who are only interested in self-realization, they actually didn't want to engage in the commitments of the world, to be completely nivritti, to free themselves from all this worldly engagement that will ultimately make them more tied, attached to the world. They want liberation. They are mumukshutwas. They want truth. And they have the capacity to live a life of renunciation. They were, of course, very respected in the Vedic society. There were few. There were few who were in the level and they were able to adopt a life of a monastic life. But they were also maintained and very much respected by the rest of the society. There's those who were in charge of having the torch of the Vedas. They kept the knowledge. They kept teaching. They were the spiritual teachers of the society. And this path was the options, the two paths, options for the Vedic seekers. Pravritti, married people. Nivritti, renounced monks. So if you follow the path of Pravritti, you need to get married and fulfill your duties as a household. There were many duties. If you are going for Nivritti, so you are taking vows of monks and living in monasteries, there were many monasteries in India, and dedicate your life to a life of introspection. Pravritti, permissive attitude, extroversion. Nivritti, repressive attitude, introspection. So the Pravritti was a permissive path within the limits of Dharma, but they were including many sensual pleasures. There was a life of social life, a socialite life, an extrovert life. The path of Nivritti is a path of austerities and of repression of the senses. That's why it was not fit for everyone. And by repressing a life, with the hope that the liberation from the world, the liberation from the ties, the emotional ties, the affectionate ties, the ties to material possessions will pacify the mind, nivritti, and finally realize the bliss of the self. Pravritti. Bhoga, indulgence, enjoyment, sensual and sexual pleasure. Nivritti, tyaga, austerities, renunciation to possessions and attachments. Bhoga is another way to call Pravritti. Tyaga is another way to call Nivritti. Bhoga is the indulgence, the enjoyment. Tyaga is the austerities, the detachment. So again, two options, two paths, open, very distinct in the Vedic society. You need to choose either or, depending on your inclination. Your inclination, as we know from the Vedic wisdom, is related to your previous life, to your vasanas and samskaras, to the level of in which level the self is concealed in you or revealed in you. So it was clear that there are two types of people where most of the society, they went after bhoga, and very few chose the path of Nivritti. Pravritti, rituals, sacrifices, prayers. Nivritti, wisdom, meditation, purification. So the means to acquire spiritual development were different. In the Pravritti, it's a matter of worship. There were many Vedic rituals that were performed in nature by the Brahmanas, the recitation of the Vedic hymns, the prayers. And they used to ask for favors. They used to do rituals in order to get progeny, to get prosperity. So this was the relationship of Pravritti with the beyond. On the opposite side, the Nivritti, they were not asking for any favor. Favors would be a hindrance in their spiritual path. They want to get rid of all the possession they used to live from alms, live in poverty, in simplicity, a simple life where you can purify your mind, purify your tendencies, your past karma, burn your past karma, meditate, acquire wisdom. The wisdom is believed to purify, and many other type of meditation for purification, and in this way attain the desired liberation. Pravritti, dharmic search for satisfaction in society and rebirth in higher worlds. The path of Nivritti led to renunciation and search for liberation. So the higher goal of those who follow the path of Pravritti was to be born in better worlds, in higher worlds. So they ask or they pray for a rebirth in a superior worlds. But the Nivritti, those who follow the renunciation, they didn't want to reborn. Those are the ones who wants to merge into the self, and therefore they renounce everything that this world can offer. So those were the two options in the Vedic society. So let's see what the Tantra came to offer. Tantra is a path of liberation that offers a fusion between Pravritti, or the positive use of material conditions, and Nivritti, or the renunciation of material conditions. So this is very surprising because these two paths cannot be more opposite. So Tantra brought something very new, which is to offer a fusion between the two. In other words, brought liberation to the married people. How they can, a married person functioning in society, aspire to the highest goal, which is liberation. So let's see what Prabhuji has to say. Obviously, Pravritti and Nivritti advocate opposite directions, but they are harmonized in Tantra, which proposes acting in the world in pursuit of enlightenment. It suggests directing sensual pleasure toward liberation. Now you can start to understand why this revelation was so revolutionary. How we can use the pleasure to get liberated. It was conceived as an obstacle for liberation. If you're attracted to your senses, if you are sexual urge, so obviously you belong to this world. You cannot get liberated from this world. You need to stay here. You need to reincarnate again and again, pass through all this circle of birth, death, suffering, old age. And if you do it in the dharmic way, if you do it with following the rules of the Vedas, so hopefully you will be reborn in higher worlds. That's what you can aspire for, to have a good birth next incarnation or a higher birth. But to direct the pleasure towards liberation, that was very new. So what Prabhuji explains about this point is that the Tantra comes to say that enjoyment, it's not an obstacle for liberation. Enjoyment is our true nature. We are joy, we are bliss in our nature. And every religion will support anything that will bring you more joy. It is known that the darkness and the sadness is what actually make us more in forgetfulness. But the self is the joy itself. It's pure ananda. So whatever brings you close to the state of the self, it's not an hindrance. It's not an obstacle. The opposite, we can use this experience of sensually pleasure to be closer to our nature, which is pure bliss. But what is an obstacle? So Prabhuji explains, the obstacle is not the joy. This is a confusion. This is what the Tantra said. The obstacle is the endeavor to repeat the pleasure. Why? Because this is how our mind works. When the mind experiences something pleasurable, it stores this as a pleasurable experience and try to repeat it. This is the mechanism of the mind. So when we experience something pleasurable, that's not a problem. But if we store it in our mind and now we disconnect from the current moment and we are endeavoring, making efforts to repeat the same experience, this is the obstacle for liberation. So what happened is that instead of experiencing the moment, which every moment is different, and Prabhuji says the life is always different, every single moment different. So in the moment that we try to reproduce a past experience, we are disconnecting from the now, from reality, and we are living in the cell of the mind. So that is the obstacle. So all the tantric rituals were powerfully charged with a lot of sensual enjoyment. We will study in later courses which were the tantric elements of the ritual. The ritual was a very powerful and pleasurable experience. But if you are present in the pleasure and not trying to recycle a past experience, so actually this pleasure is like an opening where you can get free. The rituals, the initiations were very powerful and pleasurable experiences that can awake the person to his true nature. Because in nature, we are eternal and infinite pleasure. That's the very nature. And why we are not feeling this all the time? Because we are in the mind. The mind, all the suffering is in the mind. And what is the source of suffering? The attempt to repeat past experiences and to run away from unpleasurable experiences. So this trap, and what the Tantra does, it studies this conditioning of the mind. That's why it came also to revolutionize many of the concepts of the pure and impure, because he said it's a revelation of monism. It's a revelation that's in the unity in everything. And this word is not separate from Shiva. It cannot be an obstacle because it's Shakti. It's part of Shiva. And this separation, we learn this non-dual dichotomy, non-dual polarity of a static God with a dynamic goddess. So you want to know the divine, look for it to the closest of you. And you are pure dynamism because you have life flowing through your veins. And this life is the Shakti, is the energy of the divine. So instead of seeing your body or the enjoyments of this body as an obstacle, you can meet in the body the goddess. And the goddess, they said that she dwells in your body. She is your body. She is you. And through the meeting with the closest to you, where you are, in what you are, you can go and erase your kundalini, erase your level of awareness until you meet your true nature. So actually, it not only doesn't see the pleasure as a contradiction, but sees as a tool, as an help, because we are so much present when we are enjoying. If you manage to enjoy in the moment, we are so much more present than if we are restrained and repressed. The Tantra sees the repression as an obstacle, because the repression creates more obsessions toward whatever you repress. And Prabhuji doesn't believe in repression in the sense that it will not help you to restrain your self-repression, because you can repress as long as you are forced, but in the moment of weakness, so you will defeat or you will betray the values and the vows that you yourself took upon yourself. But the way of the Tantra is to know the weaknesses, to know where you are. You start walking from the very point that you are located now. And from there, by knowing your tendencies, you can eventually overcome them. But if you repress them, you are blind to them. So they are stronger than you. They're controlling you without you knowing, because you wish you don't have it, or you are ashamed of these tendencies. Tantra said, don't be ashamed. You are human. We are humanly imperfect. But the imperfection is part of the divine plan. Otherwise, they will not create something imperfect. And perfect and imperfect is a mental concept. Perfection is what it is, as it is. When we aspire to certain ideal that we are not now, I am attracted to the senses, but I wish to arrive to a state of totally indifferent to the senses. If I don't understand my tendencies and I do it by force, Tantra said, you will not reach there. So why not to play with this? To play with these energies, to even enlarge them, even bring them to its totality. There are two types of people. The one person that is attracted to the senses and try to restrain. And the other person is attracted to the senses and goes all the way and lives in totality and is able to enjoy. This person will stay restrained in the mind, and the other person eventually will overcome the mind. Because you know how kids enjoy in totality, that sometimes you see them and you envy how they can forget themselves completely into the play or into the mad. They just forget the word, and you see this joy that is our nature. They are closer to our nature. But as they grow up, they are being put so many limits. We are being put so many limits that we should not do this, and this is allowed, and this is forbidden, and this doesn't look good, and this. So with all this, we are going and restraining our inner kids, our inner joy, and trying to live according to the rules. The Tantrika is the one that breaks the rules, that said, keep your rules. I'm going for liberation. But how I go into liberation? Not by restraining myself in a Nivritti path, not only the path, but going for the Pravritti with the purpose of Nivritti. So my goal is not just to enjoy for the sake of enjoyment. That, of course, will keep me in the samsara. My goal is to get free, but to go out from the other side of the tunnel. Not to get inside and not to be afraid to go into the tunnel, not to get stuck in the tunnel, but to have this power of being so total in my search that I can go through the tunnel, know all what the tunnel has to give, and go through in the other side after I know this word. This word is not a place of sin. My body is not a place of sin. Acceptance of the situation, even enjoyment of the situation, because as Prabhuji said, there is nothing bad in enjoying. The only problem, the only enslaving thing is that the mind catch the joy, the enjoyment, and try to repeat. And then you are in the repetition and not in the experience itself. You departure from the moment and from your nature. So yes, explore the world. Yes, explore your urges. Yes, give it a try. Of course, there is certain, the limits of Tantra is the limits of the respect the other, respect yourself. This is the basic moral limits that nothing will be positive is there. But Prabhuji, the Tantra says that if you are attentive to your urges are wise because you are divine in nature. So all the perversions come from the mind. If you are not in the mind, you will not be perverted. You will not damage anybody. So when you need to get restricted, do not kill. Because naturally, if you are in your true nature, you will not kill naturally. But because we are in the mind, with all the external influences in the mind, so then we need external rules. But the Tantra dares to break the rules, because you know that these rules is actually the very source of sin. Because I'm trying to fulfill a rule that it's against my tendency, ashamed of my tendency, so I will transpass the rules in secret, feel guilty, feel bad, all this complication that brings this the path of renunciation. And also when you know yourself, you put awareness. You put light, and we are awareness. This is what they said in nature. So to know, to start exactly from where I am, to enjoy the path, not to put goals, but to discover, to go with the spirit of exploration. In this way, I can use my body, my senses, my tendencies of Pravritti, but in the service of Nivritti, for the purpose of getting rid of them. Prabhuji brings this verse from the Kularnava Tantra, a later scripture of the Agamas. Bhogo yogavate sakshat, patakam sukrayate, mokshayate cha samsaraha, kula dharme kuleshwari. O Kuleshwari, on the path of Kula, objective worldly enjoyment becomes the means of yoga. What is normally seen as vice becomes virtue, and the world, which is originally a cause of bondage, becomes a means of liberation. Kularnava Tantra 224. So this verse gives three beautiful parallelisms. We have bhoga and yoga. We have vice and virtue, and we have the world as means of bondage or means of liberation. So let's speak a bit about them. So bhoga becomes yoga. What is enjoyment becomes a way to reunite. Yoga is union, merge. So the experience of joy is one of the experiences. Now the Tantra speaks about unity, monism. Means there is only one nature. There is only one. Now, the enjoyment is an experience. And who is the experiencer of this enjoyment? So, whoever came to Tantra, the spiritual master needs to really filter whoever is attracted just for the enjoyment, for the sake of enjoyment. For them, Pravritti is the best. It's not for those who look for Pravritti. And there were many attracted to it because it's a much more permissive path, because it's accepting every caste and man and woman. So there were so many people gravitating towards Tantra. But if you come for the wrong purposes, meaning just for the sake of having, feeling good with your worldly tendencies, okay, that's path. It's not. Tantra is a very strict path and very demanding path. That's why it was an exoteric tradition. It was only given to those who went through initiation. It was not open knowledge. Now we know the scriptures, but we know that the scriptures are just the words, the transmission itself, the experience of bhoga and yoga. This was the experience given within the kulas, within the groups of tantrikas practicing together with following a spiritual master. So what's important to understand is that You need to come for liberation. You want to enjoy not for the sake of enjoyment. This is really Pravritti. You come to enjoy for the sake of knowing yourself, on finding the crack that will lead you free. So when you come for bhoga, the bhoga should transform itself in yoga. That's why it doesn't. And that's why they said that the Tantra is a dangerous path, because we are so much attracted to the enjoyment that we can just stay there, stay in the enjoyment now in an excuse. And that was the importance of the filter that the spiritual master need to make sure that the candidate to become a tantrika had the qualifications. It needs to show already signs of divine experience. It was only for very advanced people. And we can understand why, because it in a way it plays with the most dangerous elements of society. Dangerous in the sense that can degrade you, can make you more in bondage. It might be better that you don't even get to this esoteric knowledge. That's why it was reserved just for real seekers, that they had even can restrain themselves. They can restrain. That's also an interesting point. They could be monks, but they choose to go for bhoga, to explore, because they understand that although they can and they have the willpower and maybe the level required to restrain themselves, they understand that this is a path that can stack them within the frame of the allowed and forbidden, and they want to break free from the mind, break free from the conditioning, because you can get even stuck in the virtue. You can stuck in the virtue. So the yoga said the vice become virtue. One second, the vice is vice. How vice can become virtue? There is no more vice than being in the mind with the conditioning of what is forbidden and what is allowed, and being fearful from what is forbidden, and wanting and repressing. So the Tantra comes to kind of make a mess in the concepts, in the mental concept, to reconnect you to what you really know. It's virtue. The virtue is the unity, and the sexual intercourse is a representation of the unity between Shiva and Shakti in this world. So if someone can be in the level of consciousness of Shiva, and a duty, a sexual partner can be in the level of consciousness that she can canalize Shakti, the sexual intercourse can be a meeting in this world, liberation in the world of Shiva and Shakti. So that you call vice, in the society you will call it vice. No, here we call it virtue. But you need to be in the level of consciousness, of awareness of Shiva and Shakti, so it's not for everyone. So that's the very magic of this path, that for whoever is ready for liberation in the world is much superior than liberation from the world. And this is the third point that this verse said. Here in the Kula, the world is not a means of bondage, but it's a means of liberation. You can restrain yourself from the world. Go to the Grand Canyon and close your eyes because you don't want to enjoy and you don't want to separate from the unity. But there is something superior to this, says the Kularnava Tantra. It says you can look at the world, enjoy the world, and in the experience, realize the unity. There is not enjoyer and enjoyed. The enjoyer, the enjoyed, the enjoyment are all in the field of experience. And you are the one who is aware of all these experiences. So the experiences cannot be an hindrance, cannot touch you. You are aware of every experience. So no matter which experience you are untouchable. Prabhuji gives the example, you are the screen upon which the movie is projected. So who can touch the screen? The fire in the movie will not burn the screen. The water in the movie will not wet the screen. The screen is untouchable. So the path of Tantra is to realize that you are that is not touched by any experience. If you're busy in avoiding experiences because they are bondage, so you will be more busy filtering experiences repressing experiences than to watch every experience. So the path of Tantra is the path of watchfulness, acceptance, embracing of every experience that appears in the field of experiences. The Kularnava Tantra states that the pursuit of enjoyment can be directed toward union with consciousness. This refers to external sensual enjoyment with an inner awareness of renunciation. Tantric practices simultaneously contain both Nivritti and Pravritti attitudes, including Kama. It is the meeting place of pleasure and renunciation. Tantra sees the human body as a sacred temple, and the immanent God, which is Shakti, is dwelling in the very body of the human. So the pleasures experience is not the pleasure of this body, but is a divine pleasure, and in its maximum. The enlightenment, it's compared to an orgasmic experience, where it's the peak of enjoyment. So all the practice of this path is to reproduce in this plane, to let the divine dwells in this plane, not transcendental God, as many paths would present, but immanent God, to see the divinity, to have the eyes of the awareness of the divinity in the world. So the pleasures can be just an invitation to reunite, and because the divinity is pure pleasure, the closest and the more total we can be and enjoying this world, this moment, the closest we are with the divine. I can testify as seeing Prabhuji as someone who is aware and living in the world, liberated in the world. The capacity to enjoy the world is unbelievable, because we need to understand that although our mind is being attracted to the enjoyment, at the same time it's moderating the enjoyment, because if you enjoy in totality, your mind disappears. So one of the defense mechanisms is that you cannot really cross a threshold of enjoyment that will let you lose the mind. It keeps you within the security and the safety of the mind, and you cannot really enjoy, although you will like. It's not. You cannot go for it because the mind restrains you. But the one who is living in the awareness of liberation in the world, so can even enjoy this experience, seeing that it's a dual experience. It's an experience that is of enjoyer and enjoyed, and you are not neither of them. But Prabhuji says this world is not real. This world is real, but it doesn't exist. But it's real. What that means, it's real. My experience is real. As in the dream, your experience is real, but it doesn't really exist because it borrows the existence from the real existence, from the transcendental. But as long as you are in the dream, enjoy the dream, you will eventually wake up, and whoever awake can even enjoy even more the dream, knowing who he is and knowing that this is an enjoyable pleasure of Shiva enjoying Shakti, plain separation but actually being one, and reconstructing this unity in the world is the peak of Tantra, is the Jivan Mukti. The retroprogressive path was very much enriched with this attitude, and if you know better now the background of it, you will recognize this in many of the writings of Prabhuji and in the lectures of Prabhuji. So I want to bring you now some of the writings, things that Prabhuji mentioned in different contexts, and some of his lectures. So for example, in Mantra 16 of the Ishavasya Upanishad, Prabhuji writes as follows: Pravritti and Nivritti in the retroprogressive path. There are those who mistakenly think that spiritual life implies contempt from the world. They think that rejecting the world is a sign of holiness, but holiness can only be born of an inclusive attitude that identifies a single nature as the essence of everything and everyone. Ishavasya Upanishad, Mantra 16. I can share from my personal experience, yes, I did choose the path of renunciation, but renunciation that is being done forcefully, it's not real renunciation. The true renunciation from my personal experience is when something falls by itself. Why? Because when you feel the need to renounce something, it means that you have the hope that this will bring you some happiness that you are lacking now, or will complete you in some way, or you will add you something that you are lacking currently. But this path is a path of realizing your holiness, Prabhuji said, the wholeness, the one essence behind everything. So if you are convinced that this thing will bring you something, but you are trying to renounce and you do it forcefully with repression, so means that you didn't renounce. Even if you restrain yourself, you didn't renounce it, because you didn't renounce the hope of it, the hope that it will bring me some peace of mind that now I'm lacking, or it will make me a more self-esteem that now I'm lacking. So this is a illusion, the illusion that something can completely. What Prabhuji says is that you are complete. Everything that you have hope that it will complete you is necessarily an illusion. So when you renounce to something, when you understand that it will not complete you, so then it easily falls, because you just lose the hope, or understand that nothing can complete you, or at least this thing is not what will bring you what you are lacking. What you are lacking really is your true nature. Prabhuji says we are artificially disconnected. We are in an illusionary separation. And we are so desperate in the situation that the ego, this illusionary separation, is an insatiable black hole that no matter how much you put inside, it's never satisfied. So our waste of life is a life wasted in trying to satisfy this insatiable ego, that it will bring you to frustration no matter how much you achieve. And this is the dichotomy. You go for Prakriti, try to go, but you will be miserable anyways. You want to go to Nivritti, you restrain, you will be miserable anyways. But go sanely, with the sane attitude, with a healthy attitude toward Pravritti, and understand that you are going to explore this experience. And if it promises so much joy, so bring it in. I will try to discover how much joy it can bring me. And maybe, just maybe, I will discover that no, that's not enough. So instead of keep endeavoring for it, I will have a very healthy renunciation. Prabhuji compares this sometimes with this kid that is a child and is so attached to his toys, and he takes care of them and he doesn't want to share them, and he's very excited when some new toy, they got some from the uncle, and he's excited. As the years pass by, he's less and less excited from these toys, and at the end he just gives them as a present to his cousin and forget about them. So how such strong attachment or attraction, how you could overcome it? Easily. How? By growing up. Now he's an adolescent and he's interested in other things. This toy looks to him like very childish, and he doesn't feel any attraction to this anymore. But not because the toys change, but because he grew up. So the direction of Prabhuji is mature in your understanding. Bring upon yourself spiritual wisdom that will explain you the nature of this separation, the nature of this world. And by your maturity, by your development, these things will fall alone. That is the retroprogressive path. Retro, yes, because all what brought you here is where you are now. You cannot negate what it was or restrain. Accept what brought you here. And then from here, mature, progressive. And the progressive will lead you to an easy renunciation, to a drop. Because if you are start like maturing, you will develop a sense that where the real happiness that you are looking for really lies. Prabhuji writes about bhoga and tyaga in the Ishavasya Upanishad commentary to the Mantra 9. Any enjoyment or happiness requires a temporary lapse that allows us to perceive its absence. There is no object or activity that gives pleasure continuously with the same intensity. This circle is called bhoga tyaga in Sanskrit and consists of pleasure followed by abstinence. So interesting, bhoga and tyaga. It's so true. This is what I love so much in the teachings of Prabhuji, that he brings something simple that is relevant for me. It's not to expect any mystical or transcendental experience, but check your bhoga and check your tyaga. He gives many examples in the book, and I invite you to read the Ishavasya, amazing book by Prabhuji, that he says, if you want so much to be with your friends and you miss them and you want to be with them, and in the weekend that everybody has a bit of free time, you get together and you have such a good time. But what if you will be with your friend in your room 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? You will say, go home. I need my time. I need to be alone. I need some peace of mind. So the enjoyment of the friendship or company, it's necessarily because of the solitude. If you will not have solitude at all, you don't know what is solitude, you will not enjoy also the company. He said the first ice cream is nice, the second is beautiful, third is enjoyable, the 11th one is unbearable. I cannot anymore. Your ability to enjoy, you feel that you can enjoy endlessly and you restrain. No, we cannot enjoy endlessly. We are very limited by the bhoga. So even we pursue a dream that this will give me endless enjoyment. No, we cannot have endless enjoyment. We need a tyaga. We need a abstinence in order to enjoy. In this world, everything is relative. Without the ability to restrain, if I'm all the day eating ice cream, I cannot even enjoy the ice cream anymore. So why not, instead of pursuing the bhoga, why not to explore the bhoga? Because by understanding this, you will understand that you are pursuing a very limited goal. And even if you reach it, it will be not satisfying, because what we really look for is the unlimited and absolute joy, because it's our true nature. And that cannot be found in bhoga. But why not explore bhoga, and then you will renounce to bhoga. That's why bhoga is converted into yoga. Because if you are bhoga, and you live a life of pravritti, so you will keep the hope that maybe if you have more time, more money, more opportunities, you will enjoy more. No, the joy is very limited. It will never give you what you want. But explore it, because then you will understand alone that you need to tyaga, you need to renounce it in order to get a greater joy. Materialism and spirituality in the retroprogressive path. Prabhuji writes in the commentary to the Mantra 9, in reality, materialism is the most basic form of spirituality, and spiritual life is materialism at its most refined expression. Materialism is the first step on the spiritual path. Spirituality is the very culmination of hedonistic materialism. The endless wisdom of Prabhuji is playing with these two terms, materialism and spirituality, bhoga, tyaga, pravritti, nivritti. So he says, we see it as opposite, right? So either bhoga or tyaga, this is the Vedic system. But in retroprogressive yoga, everything is a path. You start from materialism, but materialism is not different. This is the retroprogressive. You go back, but from the back you go forward without negating what was, going towards the progress. This is the amazing message of Prabhuji. Why? Because he says it's not different. What you look in materialism is not different than what you look in spirituality. Why are you thinking they're for two type of people or for two tendencies? No, it's the same. You are looking for your true nature. And you look whatever you can find. Whoever looks for hedonist materialism is because he feels that there it will find. And maybe needs to explore and get disappointed. But if he keep walking in this path, he will reach the spirituality, not as a different option. It's just a development. As the consciousness develops naturally, you go and become more subtle, more aware, more capable. And then the path is just a linear path. It's not an opposite. It's not two different concepts. The culmination, just in the beginning, the spirituality looks like materialism, but it's the search of yourself. It's the search of happiness, and you are happiness. So it's not different. But in the culmination of this materialism, you will find the spirit. That's why I want to share with you some parts of a lecture that it's called The Search for Happiness. And somebody asked Prabhuji, how I find happiness? I want happiness. I'm looking for happiness. How can I be happy? And Prabhuji shares these different stages that are very much connected to what he says now about the path from materialism to spirituality. So let's hear.
For the first level, let's say, we cannot talk about happiness. We can talk about pleasure. We talk about the first level because it's people that are very, very identified only with the body or the body-mind complex. Very basic people, very fundamental, essential, elemental level. People that are almost in between the instinct and begin to awake to the level of the intellect, but still is instinct. For those people, the only thing that exists is the body, nothing else. And of course, somebody like that will look for happiness, but only in the level of the senses.
So we start from the pleasure. We said if you are in a very basic level, you start from whoever is close to your level of awareness. You start from looking for pleasure. And this is the beginning of the path. This is the materialism, hedonism. But let's see how he continues.
First, we have pleasure. When we develop a little more, I don't say we are enlightened, but we are like not on the first level that we identify only with the body. We begin to awake to our mental level. Then we look for joy. Joy is the same like pleasure, but it's not so physiological. It's psychological. It's a little more elevated. When we identify ourselves more with the mind, we develop a little, and then we enjoy with music, for example. Music make us feel more complete, harmonize. We enjoy with poems, touch me. The poems touch my heart. I feel that emotions. I become more emotional. I become more romantic. Relation is not only about sex anymore. It's not only about pleasure. A relation is more about romantic emotions.
So you see how as you develop, and the pleasure, the physical pleasure, the bhoga per se, it's not enough. So you will enjoy naturally, by your development, by your subtleness, of things that are more subtle. You enjoy feelings, you enjoy art, you enjoy things that they are not really matter, they are not palpable, but they make in you, they give you certain experiences, certain closeness to yourself, something that you are excited to explore. You become a romantic, emotional, you can create connections. Connections are more union, something that you're incorporating to your world, your introspective you're more as you develop. What is the next stage?
Then you have another level that is happiness. Happiness is spiritual. Happiness comes from meditation. Happiness don't come anymore from the other, but is more in your relation with the divine. Happiness is from the soul. Come from devotion. Happiness is a state of being that is, you enjoy the loneliness, you enjoy the silence. Then silence becomes a melody. You can feel really happy of your relation with life, with existence, with the divine, every single moment. It's totally freedom, not anymore slavery to any object or to any person in particular. This comes out of your soul. Happiness is spiritual, it's from the soul. A spiritual person usually is happy.
So here Pravritti says, if you want happiness, it's really only in the spiritual relationship with yourself, in your peace, in devotion with the divine. Happiness cannot be depending on some bodily pleasure or some mental pleasure. So happiness is a state of solitude, is a state of introspection. There, because you are closer to yourself, there you can find the happiness. But yet it shares the fourth stage.
And the last one. That is the most difficult to talk about. In Vedanta, the other day we learned that the divine, the truth, consciousness has a name, Satchidananda, no? Ananda is what we talk about. Ananda is bliss. It's not spiritual in the sense that it's not happiness. Because in happiness, still there is somebody happy. Savikalpa. Still there is somebody who is devotee and is happy. Ananda is your real nature, is the essence of what you really are. But when you really are, what you think you are is not there anymore. It's only an infinite void, space. Nothingness that is bliss.
Bliss, Ananda. He says that as long as there is somebody that enjoys, that feels pleasure, you are there. Feels joy, enjoy the subtle things, you are there. Feels happy, of devotion, of meditation, you are there. But the ultimate is the Ananda, where you are not there anymore. Any separation will never be enough as long as you are present, you are separate. The Ananda, as he explains, is found only in the merge, in the unity. Finally, I want to share with you the way that Prabhuji describes the renunciation, right? The topic of the lecture was pleasure and renunciation. So, he said, in the level of the body, you feel pleasure. In the level of the mind, you feel joy. In the level of the soul, you feel happiness. Beyond, in the disappearance, you feel Ananda. You are Ananda. You don't feel anymore. You are Ananda. But how he describes this process of renunciation?
So as long as I don't renounce, to pleasure, I cannot enjoy. You need to understand that usually the main obstacle to enjoy are you are looking for pleasure. And the main obstacles for happiness is your searching of pleasure and joy. And as long as you look for pleasure, joy, and happiness, it's absolutely impossible to touch Ananda or bliss. So make an order.
Beautifully, Prabhuji says that it's the renunciation is not to have a conviction that something will bring you the bliss and then you restrain. But you need to renounce in order to keep advancing, because as long as you hold to your pleasure, you will not reach the level of the joy. So you need to understand this, analyze this, and let go and renounce, not for the restraint, but for the advancement. If you renounce to the joy, you will reach the level of the soul. But only if you jump beyond the soul, if you dare to disappear into this bliss, into this love, into this devotion, there you will find yourself and you will see that you are not the experiencer, the enjoyer, but you are the awareness that is aware of the joy and the enjoyed and every experience in the field of experiences. So you can feel, you can see that is someone that sees, describes the process, and so kindly shares it with us. So this is the last lecture on the course on Tantra number 1. In this course, we studied the first section of the book, Tantra Liberation in the World, called the Tantric Vision. During these 8 last lectures, we share many of the insights that Prabhuji writes in this section, but there are much more that I invite you to read in full. In general, Prabhuji has many books that can be so beneficial for every spiritual seeker. So I invite you to explore his lectures, his writings, and I hope you will find it as beneficial as I did. I want to thank Prabhuji for writing the books and sharing the discoveries of his own search, that I find it so beneficial for my own path, and I'm sure you can benefit as well. So I try to convey whatever I understand. I know that my understanding might be maybe imperfect, so I apologize for that, but it's an honor for me and an opportunity to glorify the beauty of my spiritual master. So we will meet in the next course. Thank you for bearing with me. Jaya Prabhuji.